So if I can just be real for a minute, I had the opportunity to look really smart and break the news to everyone that this was going to be an entirely new IP when I saw they cared enough about the name to actually trademark the word Nightreign a month ago. Oh, the amount of egg on my face if I had gone public with that prediction. Holy nope, it's just Elden 6 Siege. Like they even made a website for it and everything. First off, this was headlined as a co-op action experience, but it is absolutely playable solo and offline. I feel like we should get that out of the way early, since multiplayer titles tend to have this expectation attached to them nowadays that they're always going to be online whether you like it or not. And despite Nightreign being marketed as a co-op adventure with co-op shenanigans with your friends, it's built to be just as friendly towards a single-player experience. Registration starts January 10th, but it doesn't look like the actual network test will be available until February, and on console only, leading me to believe this could be looking at a June release at the absolute earliest, assuming no big delays end up happening. On top of already looking like a modding sandbox, Nightreign seems to take multiple of their established IPs and just blend them into a massive fan service disguised as a roguelike. Miyazaki has already gone on record saying he does in fact know about the seamless co-op mod, which I think is hilarious, and that it got some gears turning in the office about potential multiplayer tweaks and experiences and whatnot. And we also know this isn't really the first time FromSoft has messed around with roguelike adjacent elements, since Bloodborne had this neat chalice dungeon mechanic that borrowed quite a bit from what you would see in the average roguelike. Randomized items, rewards, boss encounters, and even the dungeon layouts were slightly different each time. So even though Nightreign's development is being helmed by a different director, the idea was still greenlit almost immediately as it was presented. And this new director, Junya Ishizaki, was apparently a pillar of Elden Ring's development and even has roots that tie all the way back to the development of Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. So it's important to note this new guy didn't just come from nowhere. Like, he's been a known presence in FromSoft for quite a while. Ishizaki has personally said the content of the game will be challenging, which no shit, but seems to want to focus on revamping the game's design with what's already established instead of making everything from scratch. The main objective of any normal run seems to be surviving 3 days in a location as a team of 3 people. The setting takes place in a reimagined realm adjacent to Limgrave called Limveld, and features all the most recognizable workings of an average roguelike. Randomized weapon locations, enemy and boss placements, relics you can attach to your character to improve certain stats and character abilities, and the occasional natural disaster to keep things interesting, I guess. Most of the starting classes are still up in the air as far as individual class info, the roles and proficiencies of each class, so on and so forth. But thanks to detailed interviews with Ishizaki, most of this info was communicated as transparently as possible. There's the Duchess, who is equipped to be an assassin-type character with a magic dagger that has an emphasis in stealth and critical hits, a Valkyrie-themed combatant known as the Wilder that looks to wield a longsword and a small shield similar to the Raging Wolf class in the old network test, just with a slightly smaller dick, I guess. We can see a scout-type character that wields a bow and can be seen using a character ability somewhat like the Mighty Shot Ash of War, and this one I'm particularly excited for because, according to an IGN interview, this class will also feature a pretty big departure from how FromSoft has traditionally handled bow combat. I don't know who this guy is or what he represents, so I'm just gonna call him Birdman. In the trailer, we see the Birdman, or what I'm presuming to be the Guardian class, using their ultimate ability, which is a sort of diving assault that gives the character a pretty scenic view from above, before crashing down and creating this massive AoE. There will be a total of 8 different classes to choose from, and unfortunately not all of them got an equal amount of limelight in the interviews, but we can extrapolate what the other classes could be using additional shots in the trailer. In this shot, we can can see another tank-centric class that focuses on heavy weapons, making use of the Golem halberd, and an entirely new movement ability, or possibly an ultimate, that sees him propelled skyward via the power of divine farts. Each run will have its own day-night cycle, with bosses standing in your way at the end of each night. Defeating the boss will allow your team to progress to the next day. As the cycle continues, the explorable area of the map will decrease gradually in size, a la Fortnite or Apex Legends, which I think is an interesting mechanic to bring into a Souls-centric game, but additional movement abilities, lack of fall damage, and improved area traversal have all been added into Nightreign's core gameplay loop to enhance this experience and make your character as mobile as possible in order to make this work. The player doesn't seem to be restrained by equip load or armor stats either, and will instead be limited to the 3 slots in their inventory per hand, meaning as long as you have a slot available, you can pick it up and use it, even if it's just for a passive bonus attached to a weapon you don't really give a shit about. Additionally, multiple characters are seen in the trailer taking advantage of a new traversal system that allows you to summon a spectral hawk that carries you to a fixed location somewhere in the map's layout. Everything about the game's movement, and especially its combat, seems to be much faster and much more involved than anything we've seen in Elden Ring, but the greatly enhanced mobility does facilitate some very exciting encounters with the local flavor. The core gameplay hinges around a team of 3 players, no PvP, but there is a separate difficulty for single-player mode, which I'm assuming is indicative that Nightreign will also be mod-friendly despite having co-op focus, I hope. Might want to have 2 different profiles set up just in case. You can technically communicate with your teammates, but this does seem very limited and doesn't really extend past lighting up parts of the map with markers and pins as a suggestion to your teammates on where to go next. Communication is encouraged very lightly, but it definitely doesn't feel like a necessity. No team chats or voice channels or anything, which is absolutely wonderful for people like me who just flat out just don't want to talk to your ass. Of course, there's also the gesture system, and due to its familiarity with most players, I'm sure that'll be the preferred system of communication instead of map pinging. Fortunately, there is a password system for people who want to play alongside their friends, and literally nobody else. Good. Some of the cooperative elements they've spotlighted so far have honestly been really impressive. It's not something I would ever expect to see in an IP even remotely close to Elden Ring, but a shared rune system, a visible outline attached to each player, and the idea of there being a revival mechanic that allows you to resurrect downed teammates all point to how seriously they're taking the co-op aspect of this project. Like most co-op-centered IPs, I would expect them to fine-tune the experience, not only as they get closer to release, obviously, but also be looking at the schematic for everything even a year after it's launched, adding in new game modes and just seeing whatever they can come up with that would be fun. I think this could turn into a very valuable sort of testing grounds for FromSoft that can give immediate feedback on how players may respond to certain balancing changes, visuals, and other gameplay mechanics that might risk upsetting a larger audience if they push it on a bigger game. I already mentioned the rapidly decreasing field of play similar to games like Apex Legends, and I don't really think I drove the point hard enough that Nightreign, currently at least, does not have any plans to excavate a battle royale mode from thine ass cheeks, which is something I'm infinitely grateful for. The balancing in PvP has improved over the years, I will admit that much, but it's still half-baked at its absolute best, and I can only imagine what you'd be signing up for as a development studio by relegating that balance to a wider scale that involves 60-something players. It's just, it's not worth it. If you're thinking about going in that direction, please don't. Like, I'm serious. Alright, I think that's just about everything I wanted to cover about the news and the game itself. It looks fun, it looks wacky, it looks like an untethered fan fiction with no proofreader, and I'm gonna lose weeks of my life to it no matter how good or bad it is. But I know there's still one facet of this project that a decently large portion of my audience is very curious about, which is that this new game is shaping up to be a modder's paradise. Every other shot from the gameplay trailer spotlighted some new animation or ability or just general purpose asset that could easily have like 9 different uses, and Nightreign has already been combining assets from both Elden Ring and the previous Dark Souls games, the most obvious being the models of the Nameless King and King of the Storm, leading me to a pretty well-founded conclusion that Nightreign is just going to be FromSoft's own kitchen sink for a year or two. And I would assume that with 8 new classes and their own unique abilities that likely come with their own unique animations, effect IDs, so on and so forth, the game's modding community might end up treating the game like their own sandbox in a very similar manner. I'll see you in 6 months. I'm done. Bye.